Hi, this is Dominic from the Vela Collective. I thought I'd do a video about gear slipping on bikes. Like this is my road bike, which I custom built, had a gear slipping problem, which I solved, thankfully. And I thought I'd share the video of what the problem was for me. And it's a really frustrating issue because it ruins your bike ride. If you got gear slipping, it's really frustrating, but also it's dangerous as well, because there were times like I was going through an intersection and I needed, to ride through it, and the gear slipped, and it's a pretty dangerous thing to happen. So it's really important to get it solved. But if it's something that's beginning to happen on your bike, then, and you've had the bike for a while, then I would suggest that your cable should be changed. It is a very big culprit of many problems with shifting, is your cable being worn. Your housing, there's friction in the housing, and they should be cleaned and lubricated. Or your chain, this is the most probable, is your chain is worn and it needs to be changed. Some people change the chain and the cassette together because they think both should be changed at the same time. So that's most likely if it's a problem that's beginning to happen on a bike. But mine was brand new basically. I mean, it was all custom built and I'd never used the wheels before. And if you just, for example, bought a bike and this is a problem, well, you may have to look at, first of all, does everything match up? I mean, because that's really important. And on this bike, it's all 9-speed Shimano. So that's a really important feature of any modern road bike, is the matching components. 9-speed Ultegra front derailleur, 9-speed cassette, 9-speed chain, 9-speed crankset, and 9-speed shifters. The crankset is actually a Campagnolo one. That doesn't make a difference on this setup, but everything else needs to match, and in this case it matched fine. Everything matched up. I had new cable, new chain, and this was all clean and new. So really looking at it, thought, well, what could be the problem? It should ride fine on the road, but that's not what happened. So because the extremes of the cassette were fine, but when I got into the centre cogs and I put pressure on them, that's where the slippage happened. And so my first suspicion was it's the cassette, because everything else looks pretty good. So that's what I focused on first. So when I was building this bike, I had it on the stand. When I finished the build, I had it on the stand and I tested it out like this. I thought, well, I'll go through the gears, it up and down. It changed well. There wasn't any sign of any hesitation, and it looked good. It looked smooth, and everything seemed to work well. But doing it on a stand, testing a bike on a stand, is very different from actually riding it hard on the road. So I cleaned the inside of these with WD-40. This cable was brand new, so I knew it wasn't the cable. I checked the line of the cable, and the length of the housing looked good. So as far as the cable is concerned, didn't really see a problem there. And then the crank, I've heard people say that if your crank's worn, it can cause this problem. Well, this crank, I think it's got quite a lot of life left in it on both chain rings, so I didn't really see that as the number one contender. The rear derailleur moved pretty well, smoothly. The chain line, looked pretty good. So by a process of elimination, I decided I need to change the cassette. I wasn't totally sure that it was the cassette, because you can't know for sure until you change it. But I thought there's a very good chance it's the cassette here. So I got myself quite a, not new but good condition used 9-speed cassette to change. So for this job you just need 3 tools. One is your cassette tool. It's like a chain tool which keeps the cassette rigid as you turn this this cassette tool, this cassette remover, which is in this case a Park Tool FR5, which slips into the front here, and then you'll need, I think, for practical sake, if you keep the quick release nut tight here so it stops slipping, the slipping of the wrench, which is your third tool, just a big wrench like this, and then you hold your chain tool and then turn like that on the wrench, and then you can easily just release this nut so you can start turning the first this locking nut. So you can easily take it off. It may require more torque than mine, because some are on pretty hard, but that's how it's done. And you have to remember there are spaces in between each cog, and it's not like a freewheel which will just come off in one single way. These are all separate with their spaces as well, so you just keep an eye on all the spaces and all the cogs and make sure you have each of them. So I replaced this 9-speed cassette, not with a brand new one, this isn't a brand new one, but in better condition than the one that was on there. I made sure that all the spaces, you can see the spaces in between the cogs, were correct, because even if you buy them second hand, they should come with all their spaces, and it's not a difficult. So in the end, that was the problem. When I put the new cassette on, the gear slipping stopped, and I haven't had any problems since. Even when I stand up hard on the pedals, there's no gear slipping at all. And I realised the problem I had was with the other cassette. The person who owned this wheel set before me had ridden a lot on these central cogs, especially this one, 3, 4, 5, and they had become worn, while the rest of the cassette was pretty good. The central ones were really worn, and that meant that there was these gear slipping going on every time there's pressure. So I would say that that's your main culprit generally, is your freewheel when you have this problem. But at the same time, a huge factor as well can be the cable. If it's worn, it's going to cause problems. You're going to have a new cable. You've got to make sure that the housing sits right, because you're talking about such fine increments of precision here. It's got to be right. So unlikely it will be the crank, but yet if it's worn here, if these are worn, it can still happen. And again, unlikely it would be the shifters, because even after years, I think they work pretty well. They do get worn, but I would say look first at your cassette as your culprit, and then check everything else. But for me, it was the cassette in this case, and I hope this helps if you've got problems of your own with gear slipping. Cheers.